cryptocurrency market cap and trend line. Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. I figured we would just do a very brief live stream and just talk about crypto. So let me post this. And then we will jump in. All right. So, well, Bitcoin's back at 25K. We are retesting the prior low. If we look at kind of where we are right now, still well below the 100-week SMA. I guess you could argue that, like over here, once we dropped below the 100-week, we didn't really see any relief until we hit the 200. The 200 is now at 22,380 or so. I think the difficult thing is that, the macro still looks really bad. Like from the macro perspective, not from like a technical analysis perspective, but just looking at the macro and everything going on in the world, it still looks relatively bad. So, you're sort of seeing this rush of investors to sell. I guess after coming in with the most recent inflation data that was 8.6% year over year. But one of the interesting things, and I've said this before, is that you'll notice that Bitcoin is at the same price that it was about a month ago, right? Same price, right? Ethereum is not, right? It fell a lot since then. So the price it was a month ago, it hit around 1,700, but it's down 20% since then. So we talked about this a lot, right? We talked about how during bear markets, Bitcoin can bounce. Bitcoin had this, it had a small rally, but it can bounce and it can come back down to the same price, and everything else can be a lot lower. And what does this lead to, right? It leads to the Bitcoin dominance going up. And you can see the Bitcoin dominance is now, it's just been going up more or less day after day after day, or week after week. So, we still are looking. I do think we're eventually going to have our date with destiny at the 200-week moving average. I'm not convinced that's necessarily the bottom, and we have gone to the 300-week before, so I don't really see any reason to assume that the 200 has to be the bottom. But it is certainly an area that we've talked about for a long time, and having a date with destiny, and it's currently coming in around 22.4K. If we look at the regression bands for Bitcoin, you can see where we currently are. Back in 2018, we came back down to the fair value fit to non-bubble data at the 200-week SMA. We're almost there, but not quite, right? We're not quite there yet. Even based on that, we would have further to fall. I was looking, though, at some of the, like the relative strength index and that kind of stuff, and we are getting about as oversold as we were back then. If we just simply draw a line here across, you can see we're almost as oversold as we were in 2018. Again, the macro is somewhat different. It's always hard to know when these, when bear market rallies will occur. But you can see from a relative strength index, from an RSI relative strength index perspective, we are about as oversold, almost, not quite. I imagine if we went to the 200-week, we would hit that level as we were back in 2018. But again, remember, we need to account for the macro, okay? And inflation's getting more and more out of control. 8.6% is the official number, right? 8.6% year over year. That doesn't look good for risk assets because of what the Fed likely has to do in order to get that under control. Regardless, one of the things I've told you guys many times, is how you navigate the bear market. We don't know when relief rallies will necessarily occur. We can speculate on them, but we certainly are in a bear market. Cash is king, right? Cash is king. Bitcoin is likely going to outperform most everything else. You can see the Bitcoin dominance is still up. It's still over 48%. and that if you feel the desire to buy altcoins, you should take a cold shower and reconsider. And I mean, a lot of times when I say that, for full disclosure, within the next couple of weeks, alt USD valuations, see some type of surge at some point, and then it leads to people saying, "Well, you said not to buy alts," but remember, nothing goes straight down, right? Alt Bitcoin pairs are in massive downtrends. Um, alt USD pairs are in massive downtrends. Ether Bitcoin in a massive downtrend. So I mean, all the alt Bitcoin pairs are in significant downtrends right now. So there's really no reason. There's really no reason, I guess, to assume that that altcoins make sense for the macro investor yet. I mean, I get it because people say, well, shouldn't you buy altcoins in a bear market? But listen, I mean, there are going to be people that tell you to buy the altcoin dip the entire bear market, but it's hard. You have to be patient on it. So I mean, I'll still say if you get the urge to buy altcoins, I would take a cold shower and reconsider. If they get a relief rally, you have to live through it. But I mean, a lot of these alt Bitcoin pairs are in massive downtrends, and we actually talked about ADA on the channel not too long ago, and I said to watch out for it getting rejected off the bull market support band, and that's where it got rejected from. Okay. So this happens with a lot of these alt Bitcoin pairs. They just simply get rejected in these massive alt Bitcoin downtrends that can last a long time. Okay, so you keep this in mind when you think about altcoins, because they are inherently a lot more risky than Bitcoin. Doesn't mean they can't rally sometimes. And even over here, I mean, you guys know I spoke about ADA a lot back in 2019, and a lot of the following that I have, I imagine, has ADA, but I'm still a bear on altcoins, especially on their Bitcoin pairs. Okay, they're just in downtrends. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that, right? I mean, just alt Bitcoin pairs are in downtrends, and Bitcoin USD is still stuck in traffic on struggle street. So I mean, it is getting close back again to the bottom of the corridor. The lower bound on that is just over $24,000, but that's where we currently sit right now. Okay, the macro is looking pretty bleak, right? Yes, I know we all would like a relief rally. I don't know when it's going to come. The 200 week is just a bit lower, about $3,000 below where we currently are. So in order to get to the 200 week moving average, we would need to go down about another 11% or so. To look at that would basically get you to the fair value fit to non-bubble data on the regression bands. And I mean, you can see there are some similarities, right? I mean, here's where the convergence of the corridor and the 200 week and the fair value fit to non-bubble data. Maybe we're heading into that over the next few weeks. It's really hard to say, but I think futures opened up red for the stock market, and it's not really leading to great things for Bitcoin. Ether USD is still, of course, looking pretty bad, which, I mean, it's not really surprising. We expect Ether Bitcoin to bleed, and if Bitcoin USD bleeds, then Ether USD is going to bleed even more. And I'll put a video out on where I ultimately think Ether could head, but from the all-time high, it's already down about 72%. So Ether USD is down about 72% from the all-time high. An 80% drop would put it at around 900, or let's see, it would put it around just under 1,000. An 85% drop would put it at 718. An 87% drop would put it at 600. I'm just sort of showing you where these various pullbacks would put Ether USD. Not necessarily it's going to happen tomorrow, but over the span of a bear market, you would expect to see that. And one of the things that we talked about is the total crypto market cap. And I made a video on this, sort of like looking at the worst case scenario, and it was saying that, look, we could go down to 500 billion. I mean, like, certainly for the entire asset class could certainly go down to 500 billion. That's more or less what we saw the NASDAQ do, or at least tech stocks back in the dot-com bubble. They hit a peak of around 3 trillion and then dropped down to, like, I don't know, 600 billion or something like that. So it can happen, right? I mean, it certainly can happen, and you're watching alt pairs bleed not only against the US dollar but also against Bitcoin. So We'll see. I mean, we'll see where it ultimately ends up. I mean, clearly we're in a fairly macro bear market at the moment. Do you guys have any questions? Have I gone over Bitcoin dominance yet? I mean, Bitcoin dominance is likely going up, right? This is what we've said for months. I would expect it to keep going higher. Again, it's not rocket science, my friends. It's just data science. We're in this same move over here. It's just happening again. Um, so yeah, Bitcoin dominance likely heading much higher. Hector says he's running out of money buying cheap altcoins. This is the dangerous game you play. I've said this for months on the channel, right? Don't get sucked into buying every altcoin USD dip because they can go much lower than you think. You don't know what a cheap altcoin is if you joined crypto in 2021. You only know what a cheap altcoin is if you lived through prior Bitcoin bear markets and stuck around for the accumulation phase, right? So yeah, I mean, a lot of people lose all their money buying altcoin dips that may never see new all-time highs. So I would encourage you to exercise some patience and to recognize that even if by some miracle the bottom for Bitcoin is 25K, which I don't think it is, right? But even if by some miracle it is the bottom, alts are still likely going to bleed against Bitcoin, right? So, well, you're putting in money into altcoins, which are likely just taking on more risk for less reward at this point. So don't be the guy that loses all your money buying every altcoin dip in a Bitcoin bear market. That's how you lose a lot of money. I mean, really, people say, well, you should buy in a bear market. No, you should buy in an accumulation phase following a bear market. Okay. I mean, I mean, you just go look at Ether in 2018. Once the bear market was over, you still had a long time to buy in the accumulation phase. Didn't mean you had to buy every step all the way down, right? So you have time, right? I mean, the next Bitcoin halving isn't until 2024. You have time, right? Before I think a lot of these things are more convincingly in an accumulation phase. So all I can really do is repeat myself. Alts are risky. All Bitcoin pairs are likely going to bleed. Bitcoin dominance is going to go much higher. But I'll let you speculate how you want to. What percentage you think the Fed is going to impact the next days post meeting? Um, I'm not really sure. What percentage of what? Someone says I'm always right. I can assure you that is not the case. Been wrong many times. Um, why is Bitcoin dominance not gone up today? Well, nothing goes up in a straight line. Actually, it is gone up today. It's up 0.13% on the day, but nothing goes up in a straight line. Um, where are your low targets? On altcoins, low targets are irrelevant, right? You just have to wait for Bitcoin to more convincingly bottom. There's no telling how far altcoins can go down, and some of them are just going to zero, right? I mean, a lot of them will survive, but a lot won't. So all USD targets in a bear market are kind of silly. I mean, guys, like I've said before, I'm not gonna comment on any specific platforms. I've said before, in bear markets, you have to be very risk off with with everything. Okay, be very risk off, and that, I mean, that goes with all this high yield stuff. Okay, I would say just be very risk off with everything, and um, just wait, be patient, wait for regulation to come through, and then maybe go back to risk on. But right now is not the time to be risk on. It's certainly time to be risk off. Still expecting belts on Bitcoin. Yeah, look, I don't know when the relief will come for Bitcoin, but whenever it does, I do think it'll leave alts behind. Okay, so um, I don't know when it's going to occur. It certainly hasn't occurred yet in the first 2 weeks of June, but whenever it does occur, whatever price it comes off of, I still think the Bitcoin dominance is going to go higher. So if you're waiting for that to convert alts to Bitcoin, you might be disappointed because alts could still bleed against Bitcoin even if that occurs. All right. Well, we're at 25.5. We are fairly close to putting in a new low. Yeah, so Bitcoin is fairly close here to putting in a new low. So we'll see if that happens. Yeah, look, I think the people trying to call the bottom right now are just going to be made a fool in a few months. I mean, I know there's all sorts of indicators that people look at, but we're just macro risk off, and it's just not any more complicated than that, right? It's just macro risk off. I wouldn't assume that um, any the indicators right now are. I mean, look, I mean, anytime we get a relief, you could always argue, but I still would assume that 25K is not the bottom. I mean, right now it certainly doesn't seem like it is, but um, we're almost about to put in a new low, it looks like. Yeah, I mean, I agree. The bottom will likely be, well, I mean, if someone says the bottom will be when the Fed pivots, I don't know that the bottom will be when the Fed pivots. I think the bottom will be when markets are starting to price in the Fed pivoting, not when they pivot. Markets tend to, anticipate these types of things. Okay, so like if inflation starts to come back down, later this year or sometime next year, the markets might start pricing in the Fed will pivot before they actually do. So the bottom will likely will likely come before the Fed actually pivots. But they're not pivoting yet, so. Chris says, I've asked this earlier, but you said to buy alts in a capitulation, but you also said alts don't bottom for 6 to 12 months after Bitcoin. I'm talking about their Bitcoin pairs. There's a difference between USD pairs of altcoins and Bitcoin pairs of altcoins. So you have to look at the relative pairings of what we're talking about. We're either talking about the USD pairing or the Bitcoin pairing. You're better off looking at the Bitcoin pairing, I think, but I know a lot of people disagree with that. Yeah, like guys, I did say Ether Bitcoin is in for a reckoning, uh, the month after Bitcoin puts in its first lower low, right? So, I mean, it's the same thing that happened over here in 2018, right? I mean, this isn't for a reckoning here. So, I made several videos about this Ether Bitcoin distribution phase, right? This ether valuation against Bitcoin distribution phase, just like Bitcoin USD in 2021. So um, I would expect this to keep going much lower. By the way, make sure you guys subscribe. If you're not subscribed, give the video a thumbs up too. We also do have the Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com with a sale going on, so check that out if you'd like. All right, we're at 25.5. We'll see if it breaks. I love how people say, if you strongly believe something, why aren't you doing this? Um, First of all, you don't know exactly what I'm doing, more than likely. But second of all, remember, no one's ever going to get this market 100% correct. So you're constantly doing things to hedge against what you think, right? So again, I think cash is king right now, and that all Bitcoin pairs are going to bleed for a while. But I know not everyone agrees with that. Has Ethereum tested its prior all-time high? Yeah, it's below it. I mean, Ether is already below its prior all-time high. So certainly Bitcoin could go below its own prior all-time high. Um, yeah, Ether's already below its 2018 all-time high. You can see it right here, right? I mean, look at it. Here it is. This was 2018 all-time high. No, I don't really use Elliott waves. Assume you know when the bottom of Bitcoin is, would you get into alts? It's a good question. You know, again, one of the things I've said before is all Bitcoin valuations tend to bottom well after Bitcoin USD does. So it depends on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to maximize your Bitcoin valuation of your portfolio, or something else? So I mean, it really depends on what your own strategy is. What levels am I DCAing the Ether Bitcoin pair? Ether Bitcoin's going down likely for the rest of the year, so I wouldn't think about DCAing Ether with Bitcoin right now. What do I think about the spot ETF and crypto regulations affecting the price? Yeah, I mean, I think regulation FUD is going to be here for the rest of this year and for a while to come. So, um, yeah, I'm sure it'll affect the price. Bitcoin's now at 25.5, so still holding on to the prior low. Yeah, the dollar, someone asked about the dollar. The US dollar currency index is currently at 104.5, so um, certainly seems like it's going to be going much higher over the next 6 months. I would not take on debt to buy Bitcoin. No, I would not. All right, guys, I think I'm going to get going. But the winds of winter. Here we are. I would still expect all Bitcoin pairs to bleed, Bitcoin dominance to go higher. Whenever Bitcoin bounces, dominance will still likely go higher. But I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and also give the video a thumbs up.